Whispers of tension between Catherine, Princess of Wales, and Queen Camilla have long simmered beneath the surface. But now, the whispers have turned into roars. In a move that insiders are calling unprecedented, Catherine has reportedly barred Camilla from attending private planning meetings for William's future coronation, sending shockwaves through royal corridors. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The moment unfolded quietly, away from cameras, but the repercussions were immediate. Sources inside Windsor claim the meeting was discreetly scheduled with a select few of William's senior aides and trusted advisors. No one expected it to escalate. But when Catherine walked out of that closed-door session, aides described her demeanor as calm but immovable. She had made her position clear, and Camilla's name was not on the list of invitees. The silence afterward, one staff member said, was louder than any outburst. Behind the scenes, tensions flared. Reports suggest Catherine invoked royal precedent to justify Camilla's exclusion, emphasizing that coronation planning for a future sovereign should rest solely with the immediate royal line. It was a statement not just about logistics, but about legacy. And William? He didn't push back. In fact, insiders say he supported her fully after a long, intense private conversation the night before. Whatever was said between them, it resulted in a unified front and a closed door for Camilla. What's perhaps more shocking is how Camilla learned of her exclusion. Not through an official memo, not through Charles, but after the meeting had already ended. Sources close to Clarence's house say Camilla was blindsided, her reaction one of quiet rage rather than public confrontation. This wasn't a clash of personalities, it was a confrontation between eras, between a woman who had shaped the monarchy from the shadows for decades, and one who now stood at the center of its future. And yet, there was no dramatic announcement, no scandalous headline from within the palace, just a wave of unease that swept through the royal household. One insider described it as a silent declaration of war, not just between two women, but between two visions of the crown. With Camilla pushed aside and Catherine stepping forward, a new dynamic had taken root. Not temporary, not accidental, but deliberate. But this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This clash had been building quietly behind the scenes, brick by brick. For years, the dynamic between Catherine and Camilla appeared cordial. But insiders now say that civility masked something deeper. A power struggle. The breaking point? A private remark made by Camilla that reportedly left Catherine in tears and William furious. The tension wasn't always visible, but it had roots. Long before the coronation drama, there had been whispers of rivalry cloaked in polite smiles. One such moment came during a Christmas lunch at Sandringham, an event meant to unify the royal family. According to staff who were nearby, Camilla made a veiled jab at Catherine's lack of blue blood, a not-so-subtle reference to her commoner origins. The words were delivered with a laugh, but the sting was unmistakable. Catherine reportedly excused herself moments later, eyes red. What followed stunned even the most seasoned palace staff. William, who had overheard part of the exchange, was seen storming out of the room, his jaw tight, fists clenched. Those close to him say he confronted his father privately, demanding an apology not just for the insult, but for the years of quiet slights Catherine had endured. The response from Charles was measured, even diplomatic. But the lack of immediate accountability only widened the rift. In the weeks that followed, Catherine began quietly pulling back from informal royal events where Camilla would be present. No dramatic exits, no public statements, just absence strategic and deliberate. Advisors within the palace, alarmed by the potential fracture, began suggesting reconciliation efforts. But Catherine reportedly remained firm. The insult had merely exposed an existing crack, one that had been widening since the early days of her royal life. Camilla's influence behind palace doors had always been underestimated, and Catherine, aware of the power Camilla wielded in whispers and back channels, had decided to stop pretending everything was fine. As public appearances resumed, the royal family maintained their familiar choreography, shoulders squared, smiles staged. But behind the cameras, tension simmered. Staff who once coordinated between the two women now worked double time to avoid overlap. Seating charts were altered, engagements restructured. The frost was subtle but unmistakable, And while the public saw grace, those inside the palace knew the truth: the line had been drawn. But when Charles attempted to mediate, what was meant to be a solution only fueled the fire further. In a bid to preserve unity, Charles III made a decision that would backfire spectacularly, appointing Camilla as unofficial advisor to coronation protocol. What he thought was a gesture of trust turned out to be the spark that ignited a royal rebellion. At first, her presence was dismissed as harmless, a supportive wife, sitting quietly at the edge of the room. But that illusion shattered quickly. Camilla didn't just observe. She offered opinions, made suggestions, and increasingly those suggestions became directives. Without formal invitation, she began attending early-stage discussions surrounding William's future coronation. And while her title carried weight, her involvement overstepped what many considered appropriate. What began as quiet participation turned into overt influence. William, typically restrained, voiced discomfort. But it was Catherine who saw the deeper problem. Camilla wasn't just inserting herself into ceremonial matters. She was rewriting the narrative of the monarchy's next chapter, one comment at a time. Insiders say the most heated conflict came during a private strategy session held in Clarence House. Catherine had prepared a briefing focused on modernizing certain traditions, something William supported. But Camilla pushed back, calling the ideas dangerously progressive and insisting they'd erode the sanctity of the crown. Tension thickened. Catherine, described by one aide as visibly shaken but composed, left the room shortly after. She would not let this stand. That same evening, Catherine requested a private audience with King Charles. What was meant to be a diplomatic appeal became a confrontation. She expressed her deep concern over Camilla's expanding authority, warning that public trust, already fragile, could not withstand mixed signals about who was steering the future. But Charles, bound by loyalty and perhaps guilt from decades past, brushed aside her worries. "We must focus on tradition," he said, according to sources close to the meeting. Camilla understands the weight of continuity. It was a dismissal cloaked in calm, but to Catherine, it was a line in the sand. And as the weeks passed, Camilla's influence grew bolder. Seating arrangements, ceremonial dress codes, guest lists, nothing seemed untouched. Royal aides who once reported solely to William now received instructions from Camilla's camp. What had started as quiet whispers became undeniable fact. Camilla was wielding power. Not officially, not openly, but effectively. She was shaping a coronation not meant for her husband but for her stepson. A coronation that symbolized the future was being shadowed by the past. It was then, in hushed late-night calls and off-the-record meetings, that Catherine began to rally support. Not with grand declarations, but with measured conversations. Trusted courtiers, respected historians, even foreign advisors. The network grew. Catherine wasn't planning rebellion. She was planning resistance. Because if the next crown would sit on her husband's head, then the foundation beneath it would not be laid by the woman who once dismantled the monarchy from within. And as Camilla gained ground, Catherine made a bold decision: she would no longer remain silent. With quiet determination, Catherine began executing a plan that would send tremors through the monarchy. What began as subtle maneuvering ended with a locked door and a name missing from the invite list: Camilla's. It started not with confrontation, but with calculation. Catherine understood the palace's true power didn't rest in titles, it lived in influence, proximity, and access. So, she moved with precision. Quiet consultations began behind closed doors, with William's most trusted aides called into confidence. Their loyalty had long been proven, and now Catherine was asking more of them: discretion, allegiance, and clarity of vision. This wouldn't be a coronation directed by ghosts of the past. It would be a defining moment of a modern reign, shaped by those who would inherit its burdens. Camilla, once central, now found herself outside the room entirely. What followed was a deliberate restructuring of the coronation planning apparatus. A new team, handpicked and tightly aligned with William and Catherine's future-focused goals, was tasked with coordinating the upcoming meetings. And notably, Camilla's name was nowhere to be found on the distribution list. The justification was rooted in protocol, technical, obscure, but undeniable. Future reign circles, Catherine argued, were constitutionally independent from the consort of a reigning monarch. It was royal language masking a strategic strike. And it worked. The first major meeting was held at Kensington Palace. Behind its gilded doors, William and Catherine led a 2-hour session laying out preliminary plans, cultural shifts, and symbolic changes they believed essential for the monarchy's survival. Charles, it said, was informed only after it concluded. And Camilla? She found out through an aide. Not a warning, not a call, just silence and a closed door. The impact was immediate. Staff scrambled, emails were retracted, messages hastily reworded. The Queen Consort had been cut out, and no one wanted to take the blame. But Camilla didn't explode. That, sources say, was what made it worse. Her fury wasn't theatrical, it was calculated. An ice-cold storm, one palace employee called it. You could feel it in the halls without a single word being spoken. The woman who had weathered scandal, clawed back public favor, and navigated decades of hostility had been sidelined not by tabloids or protesters, but by the future queen herself. Within hours, damage control went into effect. PR statements were drafted and scrapped. Internal calls buzzed from Clarence House to Windsor. But the real damage wasn't in the headlines, it was in the message. Because this wasn't about seating charts or invitation lists. It was about power, about legitimacy, about who would shape the next era of the crown. But Catherine's move wasn't just personal, it was deeply symbolic. And it sent a chilling message to the entire institution. Once seen as the power behind the throne, Camilla now found herself on the outside looking in. With each meeting she missed, her role dimmed. And inside the palace, whispers of her irrelevance began to circulate like smoke. It didn't happen all at once, it never does. But slowly, deliberately, Camilla's grip began to loosen. Those once firmly in her corner senior aides, society allies, trusted confidants started stepping back. Invitations to closed-door sessions dried up. The usual whisper briefings to the tabloids stopped coming from her circle. And perhaps most devastatingly, her name ceased appearing in the small print of official planning memos. To the public, it may have seemed like a minor adjustment in focus. But inside those palace gates, it was a signal. The Queen Consort, once pivotal, was being repositioned on the margins. Behind the heavy doors of royal corridors, aides noticed a change in Camilla. One described her as visibly shaken during a recent walkthrough of a royal engagement. Her usual sharp demeanor replaced with quiet, vacant expressions. Another said she lingered in hallways she once confidently strode through, as if waiting for someone to pull her back in. But no one did. The silence was deafening. Attempts to reinsert herself into coronation conversations were met not with confrontation but polite delay tactics, calendar conflicts, and procedural deferrals. The very bureaucracy that once upheld her now quietly kept her out. The media, once carefully curated to boost Camilla's public image, began shifting its lens. Stories began to spotlight Catherine's poise, William's statesmanship, and George's preparation for the future. Camilla, though still holding the title, started becoming a footnote. Even her presence at engagements took on a new meaning: obligatory, rather than influential. Symbolically, the Queen Consort title began to feel hollow. It remained embroidered on stationery and printed on programs, but it no longer carried the weight it once did. Influence had migrated elsewhere quietly but completely. Then came the absences. First, a charity gala where her seat remained empty, then a diplomatic reception where only Charles attended. Official reasons ranged from rest to prior commitments. But within palace staff, rumors circulated. Was she refusing to attend? Was this her protest? Or was she being asked to step back? The reality was more nuanced and more painful. This wasn't exile. It was erosion. A slow, almost invisible stripping away of relevance. And Camilla, who had once fought to be seen, now found herself fading into the very shadows she had spent decades escaping. Every missed meeting, every unreturned call, every icy glance made it clear. She was no longer at the center of the royal machinery. She was orbiting it, distant and dimming. And while Camilla faded from the spotlight, William and Catherine stepped into it, rewriting the script of modern monarchy. In the face of conflict, Prince William didn't hesitate, he stood by his wife. It was a moment of unity the monarchy hadn't seen in decades. And that loyalty came with consequences. As the pressure mounted behind palace doors, William's refusal to overturn Catherine's decision sent a thunderous message through the establishment. Courtiers whispered that this wasn't just a domestic matter, it was a quiet revolution. Charles, ever the diplomat, reportedly reached out to his son in private, urging compromise, asking for unity for the sake of the crown. But William stood firm. There would be no reversal, no appeasement. "This is our reign," he reportedly told his father. "It must reflect us, not echoes of the past." That single sentence, spoken with resolve, carried the weight of centuries and shattered something unspoken between father and son. Insiders say Charles was stunned, not angry stunned. It was the first time the future monarch had so clearly drawn a line, and it wasn't in sand. It was carved in stone. From that moment on, the dynamic between father and son shifted. There were no fiery arguments, no public breakdowns. Just a cool, aching distance. A quiet fracture that signaled not a family in turmoil but an institution undergoing transformation. While Camilla remained outwardly composed, those close to her describe a very different reality. At a private dinner following the coronation planning debacle, she reportedly broke down in tears, whispering to Charles, "I thought I mattered." The Queen consort, once untouchable, was now grappling with the brutal truth of royal recalibration. The ceremonial rituals, once dictated by tradition, began to shift subtly under William and Catherine's direction. The music, the guest lists, even the symbolic positioning of family members at future events were reimagined. It was no longer about honoring the past, it was about preparing for a new chapter. And that chapter didn't seem to include Camilla. The public began noticing the changes too. At appearances, William and Catherine moved with a sense of autonomy that felt less like deference and more like dominance. They weren't just heirs, they were already shaping the throne they hadn't yet ascended. The contrast between the current monarchy and the future reign was now impossible to ignore. Where Charles sought balance, William and Catherine demanded clarity. Where Camilla leaned on tradition, Catherine forged symbolism rooted in modernity. Every move felt deliberate. Every silence deafening. And yet beneath it all, a singular truth emerged: William's loyalty to Catherine wasn't simply about marriage. It was about legacy. He wasn't just defending his wife, he was defending the future of the crown as he envisioned it. But as they consolidated power, the question remained, what would be the final cost of pushing Camilla aside? The headlines hit like a thunderclap. Catherine blocks Camilla. Royal feud explodes. The public split instantly and the media fed the flames. What began in silence became a national reckoning. Within hours, social media transformed into a digital battlefield. Hashtags like #TeamCatherine and #QueenCamilla trended simultaneously as millions of users weighed in, dissecting every moment, every whisper, every angle of the fallout. It wasn't just palace intrigue anymore, it was a cultural fault line. On one side stood those who saw Catherine as the future, strong, poised, and unafraid to challenge the status quo. They hailed her as a modern royal willing to do what others wouldn't draw boundaries. On the other side, loyalists to Camilla painted Catherine's actions as calculated, cold, even ruthless. "You don't build a monarchy by tearing down its queen," one commentator declared. But another clapped back, "She's not tearing it down. She's saving it." Public figures and celebrities began choosing sides, knowingly or not. A former prime minister voiced cautious support for Catherine's clarity of vision. A renowned journalist called her move the boldest palace maneuver since Diana's interview. Meanwhile, Camilla's defenders scrambled to protect her legacy. Old stories once buried suddenly resurfaced. Tabloid covers recycled narratives from the early 2000s, portraying Catherine as overly ambitious, too controlling, too perfect. It was a media war dressed as royal analysis, but beneath the surface, it was personal. Viciously personal. And yet, while the battle raged online and across breakfast tables, something unexpected happened. The numbers shifted. Public opinion polls began to reveal a surge in support for William and Catherine. For the first time in years, the public seemed to see the monarchy not as a relic, but as a reflection of their own evolving values. Strong women. Clear vision. No more hiding behind palace curtains. Catherine's defiance wasn't scandalous, it was inspirational. To many, it marked a new era, one that didn't rely on tradition for its legitimacy, but on courage. Buckingham Palace, however, remained frozen. Not a word, no clarification, no denial, no endorsement. Silence, weaponized as strategy or perhaps paralysis. But silence, nonetheless. Behind closed doors, insiders say the pressure on Charles to issue a statement was immense. Advisors were divided. One camp feared losing control of the narrative. The other feared fanning the flames. Charles, reportedly torn between loyalty to his wife and the stability of the institution, said nothing. And so the rumors grew. Was he quietly backing Catherine? Was he furious behind the scenes? Or was the silence a sign that he too was starting to let go? And as the nation argued, the royals did something unexpected. They moved forward, without looking back. With Camilla no longer present, William and Catherine finally began shaping their coronation vision without resistance. What they created was not only a plan but a message. The monarchy would never be the same. Gone were the dusty blueprints of tradition for tradition's sake. In their place stood a bold reimagining of what a modern monarchy could represent. The planning meetings, once tense and divided, now moved swiftly. William and Catherine, working in sync, set a tone of quiet determination. There would be no room for spectacle designed to appease outdated institutions. Instead, the focus turned toward unity, inclusivity, and a forward-facing Britain, one that reflected not only heritage, but also hope. Catherine, no longer operating from the sidelines, made her influence known. With sharp insight and delicate force, she suggested a revision to the traditional royal procession. Fewer horses, less distance, more symbolism. The coronation oath, too, was re-examined, modernized to reflect service over supremacy. A proposal once unthinkable was now being drafted into protocol. One insider called it a cultural reset in real time. But the most telling change came quietly. Camilla's name was removed from ceremonial documents. Her role in the event, previously assumed, previously defended, was erased with little fanfare but maximum implication. Behind closed doors, the Commonwealth was watching. Representatives from Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and others were quietly briefed. What they saw wasn't just a shift in leadership, it was a rebranding of the crown itself. The message was clear. This next reign would not be dictated by legacy, but by relevance, by compassion, by strength. And central to that vision, undeniably, was Catherine. Public appearances reflected this evolution. George, once shielded from the spotlight, now walked a little closer behind his father. Charlotte, poised and perceptive, began taking her place with confidence. The imagery was intentional. William and Catherine weren't just preparing for their reign. They were preparing the realm for the next generation. The future, once abstract, was now moving in lockstep with them. Among palace aides, a new nickname quietly emerged: the Quiet Queen in Waiting. Not official, not formal, but whispered with a mix of reverence and inevitability. Catherine's rise had not been loud, but it had been absolute. She had moved the immovable, not through scandal, not through force, but with clarity, vision, and resolve. In a house built on hierarchy, she had redefined power. But while one vision solidified, another unraveled in the shadows because Camilla had not said her final word. Just when the palace thought the storm had passed, Camilla made a move that no one saw coming. Behind closed doors, a counterplan was already unfolding, and its impact could reshape everything. While William and Catherine pressed ahead with their vision of a reimagined monarchy, Camilla was far from idle. According to multiple sources, she had begun contacting foreign dignitaries, personally, quiet phone calls, handwritten notes, and discreet dinners. What first appeared to be social pleasantries soon revealed a deeper intention. She was gathering influence, not relinquishing it. One leaked letter, sent from a private estate and addressed to a former Commonwealth ambassador, referenced a circle of trusted minds forming around her. It was subtle, but the message was unmistakable. Camilla was assembling her own court. The ripples reached Buckingham before anyone could contain them. Charles, already torn between maintaining his son's trust and defending his wife's dignity, found himself in an impossible bind. Every decision now felt like a betrayal of someone. Palace insiders described him as deeply rattled, caught between two thrones, one symbolic, the other strategic. His attempts to mediate only widened the divide. For the first time since his accession, Charles wasn't guiding the crown, he was reacting to it. Then came the headline that changed everything. A longtime friend of Camilla, known for her veiled barbs and timely interviews, dropped a cryptic teaser to the press. She has more to say. And when she does, they won't be able to ignore her. That single quote sent shockwaves across newsrooms, sparking frenzied speculation. What was Camilla holding back? What revelation could shift the tide? Behind the grandeur of the palaces, behind the practiced smiles and carefully worded statements, something raw had taken hold. A battle not just for influence but for legacy. And within the royal household, fear crept in. Senior aides, once confident in their loyalties, now whispered of fractures they'd never witnessed before. One senior royal source confided anonymously, "This isn't over, it's only just begun." The monarchy stood on a razor's edge. With Catherine commanding public favor and Camilla quietly building a resistance of her own, the institution now faced a dilemma it had long feared. Two women, both crowned in their own right, vying not for titles but for permanence. One representing the future, the other fighting not to be erased. And with one crown and two power centers, the stage is set for a reckoning that could redefine the future of the throne forever. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.